They say you don't really notice when the foundation starts to crack until one day, the whole house just caves in. I think that's how it went with my family. Or maybe the cracks were always there, and I just got really good at ignoring them. Either way, the dinner that night didn't cause the rift. It revealed it. My name's Daniel. I'm 35, divorced, father of 2, and apparently the family afterthought. I didn't realize just how far that went until that night at the restaurant, when my kids sat staring at empty placemats while my sister's family got served like royalty. It was the moment everything changed. But to understand how we got there, I need to rewind a bit. Because this wasn't about one dinner. This had been brewing for years, decades even. I just finally decided to stop swallowing it. I'm the middle child. Not the forgotten youngest or the firstborn trailblazer. Just the filler kid, sandwiched between my sister, Caroline, who's 3 years older, and my younger brother, Josh, who everyone treats like he's allergic to responsibility. Caroline's the golden child. Always has been. Even when we were little, she was the one with the glittery birthday parties, the new clothes, the loud applause at piano recitals. Even though I played too. I got polite claps. A few good jobs. Nothing like the full standing ovation Caroline got for playing the same song I learned a week earlier. I told myself I was imagining it. That maybe I just wasn't as outgoing, or as charming, or as whatever it was Caroline had. I became a quiet observer. The helper. The can you watch your brother kid. The one who didn't complain. I guess I kept playing that role long after I grew up. I moved out early, worked through college while everyone else leaned on mom and dad for help. Caroline got her tuition covered, of course. Josh flunked out twice, and still got a car when he turned 21. Me? I didn't ask. I knew what the answer would be. After my divorce, I moved back to the same town to be closer to family, more for my kids than for me. I figured it'd be good for them to have grandparents around, cousins, that whole village it takes thing. My twins, Noah and Lily, are 10 now. Bright, polite, endlessly curious kids. They don't ask for much. They're the kind of kids who color thank you cards without being told. I didn't want them growing up with that constant feeling of being second tier, the way I did. But you can't protect your kids from everything. Especially not from your own family. I should have seen it coming. The signs were always there, weren't they? Caroline's kids, Mason and Ellie, always got the prime seats at family events. The biggest presents at Christmas. The first slices of cake. Caroline always had a way of taking up space, of making her kids seem just a bit more special. One Easter, she brought personalized baskets for her kids, filled with chocolate bunnies the size of a toddler. My kids got grocery store jelly beans from my mom. Nothing else. Lily smiled anyway, and said thank you. Noah just looked confused. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. It was just candy. But it kept happening. Small things. 1,000 little paper cuts that I brushed off because I didn't want to be the bitter one. Then came the birthday dinner. My mom's idea. Let's all go out, she said. My treat, she added, like she was doing us some huge favor. We ended up at this upscale Italian place Caroline liked. White tablecloths. Waiters who refilled your water before you noticed it was low. The kind of place where they call chicken nuggets pollo bites and still charge $18. I wasn't planning to come at first. I had the kids that weekend, and I knew the vibe wouldn't exactly scream kid-friendly. But Mom insisted. They'll have fun, she said. It'll be nice to have everyone together. So I dressed the kids up, ironed shirts they'd grow out of in a month, and we showed up. Caroline was already there, of course, with her husband Ben and their 2 kids, all dressed like they were heading to a magazine shoot. Mom and Dad were seated at the head of the long table, Caroline's crew on one side, and 3 empty chairs on the other, for me, Noah, and Lily. We slid in quietly, and I felt that familiar tension, the one I always carried at family events. The kind that pressed on your chest, not quite panic, not quite pain, just pressure, like you're bracing for something and don't even know what. The waiter came over almost immediately and greeted Caroline by name. Of course. Apparently she'd made the reservation. We're doing the 3-course special for the table, she said cheerfully, without looking at me. Hope that's okay, Daniel. I nodded, even though I hadn't seen the menu. Noah leaned over to me and whispered, "What's a course?" I smiled and whispered back, "It means you get more than one thing to eat." He lit up. Like dessert. Exactly. The first course arrived pretty fast. Salads, a small antipasto spread, some fancy breadsticks I saw Mason immediately hoard like it was a school cafeteria. The plates were set down in front of Caroline's family, my parents, and Josh, who'd just shown up. Then the waiter turned and began walking away. I cleared my throat. "Excuse me," I said politely. "We're missing a few here." The waiter paused. "Oh, I was told it was 8 for the set meal." I looked at Mom, confused. She didn't meet my eyes, just shrugged. "They've eaten before," she said flatly, then took a sip of her wine. Ben smirked like I'd asked for lobster flown in from France. "Next time, pack them snacks," he said, then turned back to his son, handing him an extra plate of something with prosciutto. Noah blinked. Lily sat still, her small hands folded on her lap. I felt something in me twist. The kind of twist that doesn't untwist after a deep breath. I didn't argue. Not out loud. Because that's not what I do. I looked at my mother, then at my sister, who was already laughing at something Ben said. And that's when it hit me, not just what they were doing, but that they didn't even care that they were doing it in front of my kids. And that's when I made the decision. I pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app, typed something fast, then flagged down the waiter when he returned to clear the first course. I smiled, handed him my phone, and said quietly, "Can you do me a favor? Bring this to your manager and ask if it's possible. I'll pay extra if needed." He read it, looked at me, then nodded. "Absolutely, sir." He walked off. I looked back at the table. Caroline was scrolling on her phone. Ben was bragging about his promotion. Mom was picking arugula out of her teeth with a cloth napkin like it was perfectly normal to exclude 2 10-year-olds from a meal. Noah tapped my arm. "Dad," he whispered, "are we not getting food?" I smiled. "Just wait," I said. "We'll eat." And then, 20 minutes later, the waiter returned. Not with plates. With a microphone. He handed it to me, smiling like we had a shared secret. I stood up, smiled, and made an announcement no one at that table would ever forget. I didn't speak into the mic right away. I just stood there for a second, holding it like a glass of water that might shatter if I squeezed too tight. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. Caroline's brow furrowed. Ben smirked like I was doing a stand-up bit, and Mom set down her wine glass with a clink that felt louder than it was. Noah and Lily looked up at me, confused, concerned. I gave them a soft smile. Then I set the mic down gently on the table beside my plate and sat back in my chair. Not yet. I wasn't ready to make that moment about words. Because the betrayal wasn't just that night. It was years, maybe even decades, of being told without words that we weren't enough. That my kids weren't enough. And now I saw it all so clearly. The cracks I used to patch over with excuses and silence had finally split wide open, and I couldn't unsee it. The rest of dinner only made it worse. They got their entrees next. Steaming plates of handmade pasta with shaved Parmesan, grilled salmon, buttered vegetables, steak with red wine reduction. Noah leaned forward just a little as a plate passed him by, and I saw the flicker of hope in his eyes, that childish, innocent kind that hurts when it gets crushed. But the waiter never stopped in front of us. He moved on like we weren't even there. I clenched my jaw and said nothing. Lily was quieter than usual. She just watched Ellie dig into her meal like it was a cooking show, eyes moving from fork to mouth to fork again. I noticed how she tapped her fingers on the table. 1, 2, 3, pause. 1, 2, 3, pause. A nervous habit. She'd started doing it last year when her teacher called her too sensitive during a parent-teacher meeting. I remembered comforting her after that, telling her it was okay to feel things deeply. But this was something else. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a choice. I caught my mother watching me then. Not the kids. Me. Like she was waiting for me to cause a scene. Her lips pursed in that way they did when I disappointed her without speaking. When I didn't show up to Caroline's Christmas brunch because I was sick, she wore the same look. When I forgot Josh's birthday once, after working a double shift to pay my rent, same look. She didn't look at me like a son. She looked at me like a crack in the family photo she wished she could Photoshop away. Caroline finally broke the silence from their end of the table. "You should have said you wanted them included, Daniel," she said, stabbing a piece of ravioli with the kind of precision you'd expect from a surgeon, not a sister. "We thought you were just tagging along." Ben snorted into his wine. "Yeah, it's not like kids appreciate truffle oil anyway." Noah frowned. "What's truffle oil?" I rested a hand on his shoulder. "It's something people pretend to like to feel fancy." That made him giggle, and for a moment, I held on to that sound like a lifeline. Because if I didn't, I was going to lose it. Not in the loud, table-flipping way people imagine when you say lose it. No, mine would be quieter. More final. The kind of snap that doesn't come with shouting, but silence. And silence, I've learned, can be more terrifying than rage. Dessert came, of course. A trio of shared options: tiramisu, panna cotta, and something with caramelized figs. The kids watched as the plates landed one by one, each time just out of reach. Ben offered his daughter a spoonful with a big mm and said, "Isn't this amazing? Not too sweet, right?" No one offered to share, not even a taste. I glanced at my mom again. Still nothing. And then Lily asked the question that undid me. Did we do something wrong? She said it quietly. So quietly I almost missed it. I leaned down. What do you mean, sweetheart? She looked at her napkin, folded perfectly in her lap. I don't know. Maybe Grandma's mad at us. Or Aunt Caroline. Because we didn't get dinner. Noah chimed in. Maybe it's like that time we were late to Ellie's recital and Grandma said we were rude. And that's when something inside me cracked. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to let something in. Or maybe something out. I don't know. I just know I didn't want to explain away their pain anymore. I didn't want to hand out excuses for other people's choices like candy. Not to them. Not to the only two people in that room who didn't do a thing wrong. I didn't say anything right then. I just nodded and said, "You didn't do anything wrong. Not even close." The check came eventually, and my mom made a dramatic show of covering it, as if she hadn't just excluded 3 of her own blood from the meal she'd insisted on paying for. As we all rose to leave, she gave me a tight smile. "Thanks for coming, Daniel. It meant a lot to have everyone together." Everyone. Right. As we walked to the parking lot, Ben caught up to me. "Hey, just between us," he said, voice low. "Next time, maybe grab Happy Meals first. Saves everyone the awkwardness." He winked. I didn't respond. I think my silence disappointed him. He probably wanted a reaction, but I wasn't going to waste it there. Back at the car, I got the kids buckled in. Lily was half asleep already. Noah leaned against the window, tracing something into the fogged glass. I sat in the driver's seat and stared out at the restaurant for a while. Then I texted the waiter again. Just a simple message. "Thanks. That was perfect. One more favor?" The next day was Sunday, and I was still simmering. I thought time would help. It didn't. If anything, the memory of Lily's question kept replaying in my mind, each time twisting the knife a little deeper. I started going back through all the moments I'd brushed off, all the times I'd let things slide. The family photos we weren't invited to take, the accidental exclusions from events, the way my mom always found a way to compliment Caroline's parenting and never once mentioned mine. And then came Monday. The betrayal. It wasn't dinner. It wasn't a missed birthday. It was something far worse. Noah's school had called me just after lunch. I'd listed myself as the primary contact, and thankfully, they honored it. "Hi, Mr. Reynolds. We just wanted to confirm. Your mother came by to pick up Noah and Lily today. She said there was a family emergency." My stomach dropped. "What? No, there's no emergency. I didn't authorize anyone to pick them up." There was a pause on the line. "Oh, well, she had the paperwork. Your mother is listed under emergency contacts. Did she take them?" "Yes, about 15 minutes ago. I flew out of the office so fast I left my laptop open on the desk." My thoughts raced, worst-case scenarios flooding in. I called Mom. No answer. I called again. Nothing. Finally, Caroline picked up when I tried her. "Daniel," she answered, voice syrupy. "I was wondering when you'd call. Where are my kids?" "At my place," she said. "They're fine. We're just doing a little bonding." Mom thought it would be good for them to spend more time with their cousins. It was all very spontaneous. My heart was pounding. "You took them out of school without asking me. You weren't answering your phone," she said casually. "I was working," I snapped. "Because some of us have jobs that don't end at noon." She sighed. "Daniel, you're being dramatic. They're having fun. Mason and Ellie love having them around." I drove straight there. Caroline's house is the kind of place that smells like lavender and expensive candles and judgment. When I pulled up, I saw Noah and Lily playing in the backyard, clearly a little confused but not upset. That was the only reason I didn't lose it right then and there. I knocked. Caroline opened the door with a smug smile and a glass of wine. "See? No harm done." I stepped inside. Mom was on the couch. "Don't be angry," she said. "This is what families do. We help each other. By taking my children behind my back." I said, "What if something happened? What if I hadn't found out until hours later?" "We had the paperwork," Caroline said. "You listed her. So don't act like we stole them." "That's exactly what you did." I said quietly. You took them without permission. You crossed a line. And then Mom said something I'll never forget. Well, maybe if you didn't isolate them so much, we wouldn't have to go around you. I felt something in me freeze. Isolate. You never come to our church. You don't bring them to family movie nights. You always have excuses. It's like you want them to be outsiders. I turned to Caroline. Is that what this is? You think I'm raising them wrong? I think they need more structure, she said, not even pretending to sugarcoat it anymore. More exposure to the right kind of people. I laughed. It came out hollow. And you're the right kind of people? Caroline raised an eyebrow. Compared to what, Daniel? I walked out without another word. Took my kids home. Locked the door. Sat on the floor of the living room and cried for the first time in years. Not loud. Just silently. Because I finally understood something painful and sharp. They didn't just think less of me. They thought nothing of me. And they thought even less of my kids. That was the breaking point. Not the dinner. Not the dessert. Not the little slights. It was realizing that they would happily erase me from the picture if they could. That they didn't see me as part of the family. They saw me as an obstacle. A weak link. And they'd stepped over me without hesitation. But I wasn't staying down. Because I had one final card to play. And I was going to use it. But not yet. First, I had to make sure everyone would be in the room. And when they were, I'd pick up that microphone again. And this time, I'd speak. I didn't leave the house for 2 days. Not unless I had to take the kids to school or bring in groceries. I kept the blinds half closed, not in some melodramatic way, just enough to keep the world out. Enough to breathe without feeling like someone was watching. I needed time to think. To let the anger cool into something heavier. Something sharper. I knew I couldn't keep raging in my head, replaying Caroline's smirk or Mom's indifference or Ben's disgusting wink. That fire didn't help my kids. It didn't fix anything. So I sat with it. Let it simmer down until all that was left was a quiet, clean ache. And then I started building. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Rock bottom is a funny thing. You always think you've hit it, until the floor drops again. I thought the dinner was it. Then the school pickup happened, and I realized I hadn't even gotten close. But true rock bottom? That came the following week. It started with a voicemail. Hey Daniel, it's Principal Warren from Maple Hill. Just giving you a quick call to follow up about the conversation with your sister. Caroline mentioned you'd be open to transitioning Noah and Lily into a new extracurricular program that aligns with their cousins' schedules, maybe even carpooling. I just wanted to double check before we moved ahead. Give me a call when you get this. I stared at my phone, mouth slightly open. I played it again, just to be sure I hadn't misheard. Caroline was trying to restructure my children's week behind my back. Like she was rewriting my role as a father and slotting herself in where I used to be. And worse, she wasn't even doing it in secret anymore. She didn't have to, because they all assumed I'd roll over. I always had before. I called the principal immediately and made it clear, in polite but unmistakable terms, that Caroline did not speak for me or my children. Then I hung up and paced the living room until I had worn a groove in the rug. I felt powerless. I hated that feeling more than anything. That creeping sense that no matter what I did, someone else was going to walk into my life and rearrange the furniture. Later that evening, I got another text from Mom. Family barbecue at our place this Saturday. Everyone's invited. Don't forget to bring drinks. No apology. No explanation. Just a cheerful group message like nothing had happened. As if we hadn't been humiliated. As if my kids weren't treated like placeholders. As if I hadn't cried on the living room floor while they all toasted each other over panna cotta. I almost didn't reply. But then I had a thought. Let them believe I'm coming. Let them assume I'm playing along. It's always when they stop paying attention that you get the clearest shot. So I sent a short reply. We'll be there. No emoji. No exclamation point. Just enough to keep me on the guest list. But I knew I wasn't just going to show up and eat ribs. Something had to change. I had to change. And that meant building something they couldn't touch. The next few weeks were quiet. Not emotionally, but outwardly. I didn't confront them. I didn't post vague Facebook statuses or rant to mutual friends. I went to work, picked up the kids, made dinner, read stories at night. But inside, I was laying bricks, making plans. I started with small wins. I changed the school paperwork, removed Caroline and my mom as emergency contacts, listed 2 trusted friends instead, Chris, an old college buddy, and Marla, my neighbor from across the street who watched my kids once during an emergency and treated them like her own. Then I set up appointments, therapy for myself, first. I hadn't seen a counselor in years, but I knew I needed help processing the guilt, the patterns, the years of quiet compliance. I didn't want to be the kind of dad who passed those wounds down to his children. I wanted to break the cycle. The first session was awkward. I fumbled through explanations, laughed nervously, and said things like, "I'm not even sure why I'm here," even though I knew exactly why. But the therapist, Dr. Mayfield, was patient, gentle. He asked the right questions, not just about the dinner or the kidnapping incident, but about before, the years of invisibility, the moments I'd buried. Slowly, I began to see it all with fresh eyes. "Why do you think you've tolerated so much, Daniel?" he asked one day mid-session. I shrugged. Because I wanted peace. Because it was easier. He leaned forward. Was it easier? Or just familiar? That stuck with me. Maybe I had confused comfort with survival. Meanwhile, I started pouring more time into my freelance design work. I'd been doing it part-time for years. Logos, branding packages, small business websites. But I never really pushed it. Always figured I wasn't big enough to go full-time. But now, something in me shifted. I wanted independence. Financially, emotionally. I didn't want to rely on anyone who could hold it over my head. So I updated my portfolio, reached out to old clients, asked for testimonials, joined online forums. By the end of the second month, I had 3 consistent contracts and was making nearly as much as I was at my day job. The day I called HR to officially go part-time, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. Real, earned, grown from scratch power. The kind no one can smirk out of your hands. Noah and Lily noticed the change too. I wasn't just more present. I was lighter, more alive. We started doing movie nights again. I built them a bookshelf from scratch and surprised them with it one Saturday morning. We had inside jokes again. Laughter that didn't sound forced. The air in the house felt different. Fuller. Then, one night while cleaning the closet, I found an old photo album. Tucked in the back was a picture from my high school graduation. Everyone was there. Mom, Dad, Caroline, Josh. In the center, holding the diploma awkwardly, was 17-year-old me. I stared at my own eyes for a long time. Noticed how I wasn't smiling. Not really. Just enduring. That's the word that kept coming back to me. I didn't want to endure anymore. I wanted to live. And then the opportunity came, like clockwork. Another dinner. This time, for my father's birthday. Caroline was organizing it, naturally. Same restaurant as before. Same long table. Same group chat invitation. This time, though, I was prepared. I texted Caroline privately. "We'll be there. Please include Noah and Lily in the meal this time. No surprises." She replied with a thumbs up. That was it. But I didn't trust it. Not really. I called the restaurant myself, confirmed the head count, gave them my card to secure 3 extra meals if needed. I wasn't going to be caught off guard again. But I wasn't just going for dinner. This time, I had a plan. Because I'd quietly stayed in contact with the waiter from the first dinner, Mason. Young guy, smart, quick-witted. Turned out he was studying audio engineering. I offered him a quick gig. Bring the mic again. But not just that. This time, I wanted the speaker system linked. I had something to say, but not yet. I still had a few more pieces to lay. One of them came from a surprising place, my dad. We don't talk much, usually. He's always been quiet, the kind of man who lets my mom make all the decisions and keeps his head down. But one afternoon, he showed up at my place. Said he was in the neighborhood, but I knew that wasn't true. "I heard about what happened," he said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. I raised an eyebrow. "Which part?" He sighed. "The school. Caroline. The kids." I nodded slowly. "And?" He looked down. I didn't know it went that far. I let the silence stretch. "Finally," he said, "your mom, she means well. But she sees the world a certain way. And Caroline? Well, she's always been persuasive. She's always been cruel," I corrected. He didn't argue. Before he left, he placed an envelope on my table. "Something I've been meaning to give you. It's not much, but I want you to know I see you. Always have. I just didn't know how to say it." Inside was a check. $5,000. I never cashed it, but I kept it. Not for the money. For the note scribbled on the back. "Proud of the father you've become. Don't let them make you doubt it." That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat outside and stared at the stars. Thought about that boy in the photo, awkward, tired, barely holding it together. I thought about how far he'd come, how far I'd come, and for the first time in a long time, I felt proud. Not because of revenge, not because of proving anyone wrong, but because I finally knew my own worth. And I knew, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that no one at that table could take it from me anymore. Still, that didn't mean I wouldn't show them exactly who they'd underestimated. Because the birthday dinner was coming. And when I picked up that microphone again, this time, I wasn't asking for a plate. I was serving something else entirely. The restaurant looked exactly the same. That was the first thing I noticed when we pulled into the lot on the evening of my father's birthday. Same valets in crisp black uniforms. Same flickering lanterns outside the entrance. Same glass windows fogged just slightly with the warmth of conversation and expensive food inside. But something about the night felt different. Maybe it was the chill in the air. Maybe it was the stillness in me. Because this time, I wasn't nervous. I wasn't waiting for the next slight. I was ready. Do you think they'll feed us this time? Noah asked as I straightened his collar in the back seat. I smiled faintly. I think they'll be too busy watching to notice what we're eating. Lily giggled beside him, clutching the little notebook she always brought to dinners now. If they forget again, I'm writing it down. Page 1. They were very rude, and I'm deducting points. I ruffled her hair. Fair enough, Judge Lily. As we walked into the restaurant, the hostess looked up and smiled. Mr. Reynolds, right? That's me. She handed me a slim envelope. From Mason. Said you'd understand. I opened it quietly and slid the contents into my inside coat pocket without letting the kids see. Just a small key card and a folded note. System's ready. Flip the switch when you're ready for them to listen. The mic was already arranged too, waiting in a stand beside our long reserved table in the back corner. Discreet. Almost decorative. Exactly how I wanted it. Caroline hadn't arrived yet, of course. She loved being fashionably late to her own show. Her family made an entrance 20 minutes later, all bright colors and loud greetings and kisses that landed just a little too close to the camera lens someone had brought to document the birthday for memories. My mom was already seated beside my father, chatting with Ben about some summer trip they were planning. She barely acknowledged me. Just a nod. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. I didn't mind, because I wasn't there for approval anymore. I was there for closure. And maybe, just maybe, a little justice. Hey, Danny. Caroline beamed, like we were old college friends meeting after a decade instead of siblings carrying an unspoken war between them. So glad you could make it. Oh, and you brought the little ones. How fun. I ignored the infantilizing tone. They wouldn't miss Grandpa's birthday. Ben reached out for a handshake, all teeth and smug familiarity. You look good, man. Finally got some sleep. I've been sleeping great, I said with a half smile. Thanks for your concern. Caroline squinted, sensing something beneath the surface. But she let it go. She always did, right up until she couldn't. Everyone sat. The kids took their seats beside me this time, not shoved to the far end like we were waiting for scraps. Mason wasn't our waiter tonight, but he walked by, offered a subtle nod, then vanished into the kitchen. I knew he'd be listening from the booth, where he'd set up the mic system and connected the main speakers usually reserved for wedding parties and live music events. The first course was served. This time, my kids got plates. But I didn't touch mine, because I wasn't hungry. Not for food. Nice turnout, my dad said, looking around the table with a calm satisfaction. Good to see everyone. Not everyone, Mom said, glancing down the empty stretch of the table. Josh bailed again. Said he had a thing. I swear, that boy will be 35 and still chasing high school friends. Didn't know Josh was coming, I said casually. Oh, we always invite him, she replied with a little sniff. Whether or not he shows, well, that's on him. Caroline turned toward me then, wine glass in hand. So, Daniel, how are things? Heard from Mom that you went part-time at work. Must be nice having so much free time. I smiled. It's been liberating, actually. Gave me space to launch my own firm. Ben whistled. Oh, look at you. Big man now, huh? What kind of firm? Design. Branding. Full creative strategy. Already landed a couple big clients. I paused, then added with a thin layer of sugar. You'd know them if I told you. Caroline blinked. The gears turned behind her carefully polished smile. Wow, that's impressive. You should have said something earlier. You didn't ask, I said. But it's okay. I'm used to that. A brief, uncomfortable silence fell across the table. And in that silence, I saw them glance at each other. Just a flicker. But it told me everything. They were recalibrating. For the first time in years, I had shifted the balance of power, and they could feel it. That's what this setup was really about. Not the speech I planned or the mic or the carefully choreographed moment to come. It was about forcing them to see me, to acknowledge the person they'd ignored, diminished, or manipulated for most of my adult life. I didn't need revenge for its own sake. I needed recognition. But I also wasn't above enjoying the moment it would take to get there. After the second course, plates cleared, drinks refilled, I gave Mason the signal. Just a casual nod. He vanished into the back. Mom stood up and tapped her glass with a fork. Before we bring out the cake, I just want to thank you all for being here. Especially with everything going on in the world. It means something that we can still come together as a family. I caught the double meaning. As a family, excluding those who don't play along. Those who don't fall in line. She didn't say it. She didn't have to. And of course, she continued, placing a hand on Dad's shoulder. This night is about your father. 70 years young and still putting up with us. Light laughter rippled around the table. She sat, and then I stood. Not abruptly, not with dramatic flair, just enough to draw eyes. I reached for the microphone, pulled it gently from the stand, cleared my throat. Ben leaned back, smirking. Caroline tilted her head like I was about to recite a poem I wrote in high school. Before we bring out the cake, I said, my voice calm but clear through the speakers overhead, I'd like to say a few words. A few heads turned. Even a few nearby tables looked over, curious. Growing up, I began, I used to think family was something you earn your place in. That if you worked hard enough, helped enough, stayed quiet enough, people would make space for you. I thought being useful was the same as being loved. Mason adjusted the levels from the booth. I could hear myself perfectly. But what I've learned, especially this past year, is that love isn't earned. It's given. And if it isn't given freely, then it isn't real. I glanced at Lily and Noah, who were watching me wide-eyed. I kept going. I've spent years biting my tongue, smiling through slights, explaining away things that never should have happened. Not because I was too weak to speak up, but because I didn't think anyone would listen. I thought silence would protect my kids from the same feelings I grew up with. Caroline was no longer smiling. Mom had gone still, and for a while it worked. But then one night, we came here, this very restaurant, and my children were deliberately excluded from a meal that was supposed to be about family. They sat with empty plates while everyone else ate, laughed, toasted. A few gasps from nearby tables now. Conversations around us were fading. Do you know what my daughter asked me that night? I looked at Mom. Then Caroline. She asked if they had done something wrong. She thought she'd earned that treatment, just like I used to think I earned mine. Noah was staring at the table now. Lily's hand was on his. That was the moment something changed in me. Because I will never, ever let my children grow up thinking that being ignored is normal. That being left out is just what happens when you don't shine bright enough. Caroline opened her mouth, but I held up a finger, not angrily, just firmly. I'm not saying this to shame anyone. I'm saying this because I need you all to hear me. And sometimes, I gestured toward the speakers. You have to amplify your voice before people take it seriously. And that's when I stopped. Not because I was finished, but because I wanted the silence that followed to sit, to breathe, to echo. Then I slowly placed the mic back into the stand and returned to my seat. No one clapped. No one spoke. Just the quiet hum of a restaurant watching a family come undone, truth by truth, word by word. And then the waiter approached our table with a small, square cake. Not the one Caroline ordered. This one had 7 words written across the top in delicate, looping script. To the ones you forgot to feed. I hadn't ordered it. Mason had. I didn't even have to ask. The silence after the cake was delivered lasted longer than the speech itself. Everyone just stared at it. 7 perfect words piped in white frosting across a smooth layer of dark chocolate ganache. To the ones you forgot to feed. The symbolism wasn't subtle. It didn't have to be. In fact, the more obvious, the better. Caroline's fork hung mid-air, a piece of tiramisu limp and forgotten. Ben blinked like someone had just slapped him across the face with a dessert menu. My mom's eyes narrowed at the writing, then at me, like she was still trying to decide whether she should pretend it was a joke or treat it like a threat. I didn't look away. I didn't speak. Let the cake say what I didn't need to anymore. The waiter, bless Mason's sense of drama, cut slices with surgical precision, starting with me, Noah, and Lily. We got the first 3. He even placed Lily's slice on a plate with a tiny candle sticking out of it. Because you, young lady, deserve cake, he whispered as he set it down in front of her. She smiled like the sun had come out. Everyone else. They got served after us. My mom's lips parted as if to protest, but no words came. Caroline glanced at her husband, searching for direction, but Ben had gone silent, clearly realizing there was no clever quip that could rescue them now. It was rare to see him without a smirk, and seeing it vanish was its own kind of justice. They were rattled. Finally, the rest of the dinner moved like molasses. Small talk sputtered, then died. My dad cleared his throat a few times and tried to say something, maybe an attempt to pivot the conversation back to him, to his birthday, but it never landed. No one could think about anything else except the speech, the mic, the cake, the sudden realization that their narrative had cracked open in public. After dessert, I stood and gathered Noah and Lily's things quietly, helping them with their jackets. "You're leaving?" my mom asked, voice tight. I looked at her for a long moment. "Yes, but we haven't even done presents yet." I nodded. I didn't bring one. The gasp she let out was small, but sharp, like a pinprick to the pride. "I brought something else," I added. "Something a little more permanent." Ben made a sound like he was about to speak, but I turned my back to him. I bent down to Lily's eye level and whispered, "You okay, baby?" She nodded, then looked up at my mom across the table. "Grandma," she said quietly, "next time, maybe you can remember to feed everyone, not just some." My mom opened her mouth, but Lily didn't wait for a response. She walked out proudly, notebook in hand. Noah followed, quiet and calm, but there was something different in his walk. A little straighter, a little more solid. I stayed a few steps behind them, not because I had more to say, but because I wanted the last image they had of me to linger, not as the background character, not as the peacemaker, not as the filler sibling who took what he got, but as a father, a man, and someone they couldn't bulldoze anymore. The fallout came fast. I didn't expect that part. I thought maybe they'd stew in silence, try to pretend it hadn't happened. But pride is a funny thing. When it gets wounded publicly, it tends to bleed out privately. The first message came that same night from Caroline. "You humiliated everyone. What is wrong with you?" Then a second one, 20 minutes later. "Do you feel good about that? You think this makes you the hero?" And then, the real reason she was upset. "You know mom's been crying since we got home, right? If she gets sick again, that's on you." Oh, there it was. The guilt grenade. I didn't reply. Not then. Not the next day. Not ever. Let them sit in the discomfort. I'd sat in mine for years. The next week, I got a call from my dad. I hesitated before answering, but then I picked up. He didn't yell. He didn't plead. He just sighed and said, "I should have spoken up sooner." I said nothing. "I saw it all, Daniel. I just never knew what to do about it." I let that hang there. Then I said, "You could have done something. You still can." "I'm trying," he replied. "I told your mother that what happened was her wake-up call. I don't think she's ready to admit it yet." "Then she's not ready to see me." He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "For what it's worth, your kids are lucky to have you." That meant more than I expected. I didn't need a flood of validation. Just one honest line. I took it and moved on. 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. Not a text. Not an email. An actual letter. From my mother. Handwritten. On her floral stationery. "Daniel, I don't know what I did to make you hate me, but you've made your point. Whatever your issue is with Caroline, I wish you'd kept it between you two. What you did at the restaurant was cruel. You embarrassed us. You ruined your father's birthday. If you want to be part of this family again, I suggest you apologize." I folded the letter slowly, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it into the bottom drawer of my desk. Then I added her number to my blocked list. That drawer, by the way, is where I keep all the things I never want to waste energy on again. Old rejection letters, unpaid receipts from a failed business partnership, a cracked photo frame from a vacation I don't remember fondly. And now, mom's letter. Closure doesn't always come wrapped in apologies. Sometimes, it's in the decision not to go back to the fire that burned you. 3 months passed. Life got quiet again, but the good kind of quiet. Noah and Lily thrived. They made friends, took up chess and painting. I started volunteering at their school. We even hosted a game night once, and one of the teachers emailed me after, "You're raising good humans." I don't think she knew how much that one line meant to me. My freelance business grew too. I landed 2 more clients, small, but passionate. One was a bakery that asked for a total rebrand, and when I showed them their new logo, the owner actually cried. Not because it was flashy, because it felt like her. That's the kind of work I wanted to do. Real, personal, purposeful, kind of like parenting. One night, while reading Lily a bedtime story, she looked up and asked, "Dad, are we still part of Grandma's family?" I thought about it. Then I said, "We're part of our family, and that's the one that matters most." She nodded, satisfied. I tucked her in, turned out the light, and sat outside with a cup of tea, thinking about everything that had happened. Sometimes revenge doesn't look like storming the gates or flipping the table. Sometimes it looks like calmly standing up, taking the mic, and reminding everyone what real love should look like, and then walking away from the ones who never learned. Because the best revenge isn't a speech. It's peace. It's showing them you don't need their table. You built your own, and it's full.